Welcome back to Poor Guy Car Vlog. Today we're going to feature and take our first drive in the new Ferrari 296. I'm absolutely flabbergasted that I even bought this car. I can't believe it. I'm still to this day absolutely blown away by it because I could have never dreamed that this day would come, but here it is. Things are so cheap, in fact, to get to this point. You know, I'll give you an example. We were actually just got back from Hawaii, and in Hawaii, I got these glasses, and you're probably wondering, where did you get these glasses from? Well, we were down in Honolulu there about a month ago, and I picked these glasses up at Ross. I believe it was Ross or one of those big box department stores, and a cheap set of glasses. It'll cost me, I think, $7 or $8, but that's good. They work. Sure, they're a little bit, you've got the deflection here. It's kind of a fun set of glasses. You know, the white really makes it pop. But you know what? Quite honestly, that's kind of the name of the game, is looking for deals, looking for bargains. You know, that's how I was able to get to this point. You know what? I never thought I'd get here, but through scrimping, saving, and honestly, you know, trading up vehicles, buying, selling, working really hard, a couple of jobs, I finally got to a point where I'm able to afford the car of my dreams. Here it is. And I want to talk about one of the coolest elements and features you can get on this car. It's absolutely amazing. And a lot of people aren't loving this car for that reason. But I want to talk about it in more detail because these cars, these new 296 as well as the SF90, are now hybrids. Same with the McLaren Arturo, Lamborghini Revuelto, and that seems to be the name of the game. Well, a lot of people don't like a lot of the vehicles these days going pure EV, and you lack the drama, the noise, the sound. These cars give it all of that in spades. As a matter of fact, the engine under this hood here is one of the best sounding Ferraris in a long time. I mean, ever since the 458 was one of the best sounding Ferraris, of course, naturally aspirated. You lose a lot of the great sounds because of the turbo muffling. Of course, as soon as they stepped into the 48, you started losing the sound. The F8 sounded even worse. Even the SF90 doesn't sound as good as this. The 296 has an absolutely glorious soundtrack. But that's a big reason. That's one of the factors. But it's the fact that you don't necessarily need to always be driving around on gas. And that is one of the things that really drew me in. Now, yes, there's extra costs and maintenance and things to be worried about. But right now, the way it looks like Ferrari has actually added some warranty. They've got a pretty decent extensive warranty on this to cover batteries and electric motors. But in doing so, it allows you a little bit of peace of mind. So you're not having to spend that hard-earned dollars all at once anyway. First thing is you grab the key and you put it in this slot right down here. It actually just slides in there nice and snug. And then the next thing is, a lot of people seem to hate the haptic controls, but I personally like them. And you know what, if they say there's a solution, I'm fine with this. We have the upgraded version. You can see the indents. So this is the phase 2 of the steering wheel. And a lot of people don't like the haptics. But when you look at the haptic controls, everything's so dark, clean. It's just lovely. I go over here. You have the E-Manatino and you have the regular Manatino switch. And of course, what we're going to do is we're going to turn that on. It's going to light everything up. But you have the modes. You have a few of the different performance modes here. Of course, we're in hybrid by default, but I'm going to go pure EV right there, or pure electric mode. And then, of course, it changes the display. And we're going to have to now give it a start again. Now you get the whiz bang. And of course, here we're going to give that a quick pull and off we go. Now, let's head her on out. This is absolutely cool. I love this feature, just driving around without actually even having to worry about you know, without even really having to worry about, you know, starting up your engine. Maybe you want to do a short trip. When you look down on the gauge, it tells you exactly even how many Ks you have on electric mode, tells you how many Ks you have roughly on gas. And of course, you can use that collectively through your hybrid system. And it's great. I love it. So I never thought, okay, a lot of people are hating on the hybrid and it seems to be getting a bad rap. I'm not totally sure why. All it does is add value in my own personal opinion. I mean, people don't like hybrid, they don't like electronics and haptics and V6. There's a lot of reasons, for some reason, why these cars seem to be getting a bum rap, but they all are adding value. Now, of course, it's extra complexity. There are a few bugs. You know, I'm hearing a lot of it on the forums, but in all honesty, largely, this is a relatively lower production number type car. You're not using this every day. You're not piling on 200,000 miles in 5 years. Like it really doesn't matter that much. You know, you're primarily driving it along and just enjoying the general use of this vehicle on sunny and warm days. You know, see the sun shining. It's a great opportunity to take these cars for a drive. But realistically, I think there's many reasons why you want an electric vehicle. Well, not electric, but hybrid, because you know, from my take, a Ferrari, you want to hear the noises, you want to hear the sounds and all of that excitement. And that's why I bought a Ferrari, because of the sounds and the history and the drivetrains. But they're adding something to it. They're adding power, performance, versatility. This isn't an advertisement, but you know what? I'm cheap as hell. And if I can use another feature that softens up the impact to the wear and tear of the vehicle, I'm going to use it. So think about this for a second. You never thought, oh, it's just hybrid. It's, you know, it's a Toyota, it's a Honda hybrid. No, and from my take, it does other things. Listen, straight up. Think about that time you wanted to wash the car. You had to start it up and back it out of the garage, right? Why would you want to start up all 650 horsepower or 500 horsepower, fired up? We know cold starts are bad on engines. I actually know somebody who has a Lamborghini, and he had a business, and he kept, you know, he'd start it up in the morning, he'd back the car out so he could move vehicles in and out of his business, and then he'd start it up, cold start at the end of the day to drive it back into the shop. This went on and on for weeks. After a while, one start, he actually blew an engine, spun a bearing because of a cold start. And what ended up happening there was he needed a brand new engine on an exotic car. That does not come cheap. You know, other practical purposes, say for example, you know, you've got the car, you were driving it hard one time, and then you think, okay, you know, I'm going on a long trip, I just need to step out and get some gas for the vehicle. Well, what better feature than throw it in E mode and, you know what, just zoom on down to the local gas station, fill it up. You don't need to start up the engine, throw extra mileage on there. Again, it's those car cold starts. So when you want it, it's there. When you want that fire-breathing twin-turbo V6 or, you know, some of the other cars that are V8s, when you want it, it's available. But just for those trivial little drives, why wouldn't you want something that you can, you know, just quickly do a quick start, move it in and out of the garage for a wash, take it to the, you know, service station. Some people, you know, in Europe, there's areas where you have to drive through these quiet zones and you can be fined. So there's practical purposes in parts of, say, Europe, and likely that's probably going to be coming to a city near you in North America as well. But you know, quite frankly, the way I see this, there's a multitude of different reasons, but there's a major reason why hybrid is such a great element in these cars. You know, I like engine noises. I like that rumble of that, you know, that engine behind me. I just love that sound. Like, call me old school, call me redneck, call me whatever you want. Don't call me late for lunch, and don't call me overpaid for these glasses, right? But at the end of the day, I'm gonna just say straight up, you know, performance. Let's face it, let's be real. You know, years ago, I was sitting around the lunch table, I grabbed a magazine, and I came across this article of how Porsche was using some sort of energy recovery system on a race car, or they were testing it out on race car series, maybe a GT3. I don't know, shit, who cares? But they were testing out some sort of an energy recovery system, so upon braking, it would sort of build up this inertia, and it would allow this energy recovery and this mechanical mechanism that then sat right beside you, and of course, or it was mounted inside the vehicle. And so upon deceleration, it would build up this energy like a spring, and then upon coming out of the exit of a corner, it would thrust and it would give you that short burst of energy release to give you that push forward. Well, when I heard about that, I thought, how is that for ridiculous performance? How is that for extra add-on? How is that for technology that brings performance to a whole new level? I mean, we know the internal combustion engine adds that element of that fire-breathing element, that excitement, that noise, that thrust, that vibration. And you know, that was my first experience ever, and I knew I needed to get into an Italian supercar. A good buddy of mine, Ed, you know, he's a mechanic here, kind of northern Alberta in Edmonton. He fixes a lot of these exotics and supercars and things. He had a Gallardo, which years ago, I think it needed a little bit of a tune-up, so it was in there. And then he did a little run because, you know, mechanics, they got to always check, you know, make sure their fix kind of did what it had to do. So he took it for a run. He said, jump in. I went in the passenger seat. That was my first experience with that vibration in the seat. If you've never experienced an Italian supercar, you really need to give it a run. You do. And from that day, I was totally hooked. Like, honestly, totally hooked on these kind of ridiculous cars. That said, now, you know, we've evolved. You know, that was back in 2004, you know, when the Gallardo first came out. That was quite some time ago. We're talking 20 years ago now. But, you know, things have changed. But this energy recovery and hybrid technology is adding performance you could only dream of. I mean, thinking about all these hybrid hypercars. I mean, even look at the new Corvette, that 01XX, whatever they want to call it. And that thing there's putting down 1,250 horse. You know, they're bragging that it's faster than all of its competitors, like the SF90 and the Revuelto. And, you know, I mean, it's not, I don't know if it's the same experience, but it's a beast. And I'd love to give one of those a test drive. We'll see maybe one day. But with that said, that's an example of how they're putting everything. They're putting a flat plane crank V8. They're putting, you know, high performance engine all dialed right in with a supercharger on it, and they're throwing hybrid assist on there. Now you've got an engine with 1,250 horsepower. You could have only dreamed about that with, you know, special race fuel and, you know, blowers and big block Chevys and drag race, you know, racers were the only things that could put down numbers like that. And now these are cars that are drivable. They idle smooth in traffic. You can daily drive them. And that's what's so cool about some of this hybrid technology. You get performance, acceleration that just absolutely mind-blowing in some of these cases. And these ones here, like these Ferraris, they're absolutely glorious. They're peaceful, they're serene. I still have 21 kilometers on the trip here, of course, of battery electric only, and it's allowing me to just cruise around and talk about the whole experience. So it's really the practical side. It's also the performance add-on, and we're not trying to be a Toyota, and I don't think Ferrari was ever trying to do what, you know, with a Prius and those kind of silly cars. They're never trying to do that. That's not the game. They're trying to provide a certain level of flexibility for some of these towns and cities with you know, hush laws and laws that keep you from firing up your loud screaming V12 a supercar, right? To keep those noises down, to keep that sound down in those quiet areas. But it's also adding performance. It's not downsizing the engines. I mean, on gas alone, this is like 660, 670 horsepower on V6 gas alone. So just on that gas engine that's driving this unit, it puts down serious performance. So it's not that they're doing, you know, like BMW with their silly little, you know, they had that i8 or i7 or whatever that thing with that 3-cylinder turbo that had essentially electric hybrid, and it looked like a supercar, but to me it was a big swing and a miss. And, you know, BMW, it was a nice try at the time, but, you know, they had so much more potential. They should have put in a twin turbo V8 in that car instead, and the hybrid, then they'd have a supercar. But instead they put down something that feels a lot more like a hybrid drivetrain coming out of Toyota or Honda, and not so much, you know, coming out of BMW's best and finest. And then even when you step on it, you know, it's zingy. Like it has honestly, it has enough of that. You know, it just, you don't need much. It's perfectly quick enough. Like even on this electric mode, they say it runs up to, I believe it's around 110, 120 kilometers an hour. And on that note, of course, getting there is, it feels as brisk as any modern day hatchback these days. So if you're used to driving, say, a Golf or something along those lines, or, you know, a kind of a mid-range Honda Civic or something, you know, kind of semi-sporty but not particularly fast, that's what this feels like with beer just on battery alone. So you feel like you can have a little bit of fun. You can still keep up with traffic easily and exceed some of it, and do it all, you know, on these short runs. You know, if I want to go visit a buddy and I don't feel like starting up the engine just to show, you know, a friend of mine the new car, I can just zoom on over there and not start it up, show him the car, zoom on home and plug it in again. And this routine can go round and around. And quite frankly, I love it. There's a practical side and there's a performance side. And this hybrid technology to me is nothing but an adder. You know, what we're seeing today is what's going on now is Ferrari's also adding on extra warranty. You know, I believe we're talking 7 years. Last I heard was there's about a 7-year warranty on the electric components of this vehicle, which, you know, really is more, you know, for the batteries and the main components, the motors, the things that you worry about that could fail, the big ticket items. They've got about a 7-year warranty on that, is what I understand. And there's a 7-year, with all these new Ferraris, they're giving you a 7-year warranty, no, sorry, 7-year maintenance plan, which basically covers all your servicing for 7 years, like not a dime out of pocket. And it does have a 3-year comprehensive warranty, so it gives you pretty much the full extent of your regular warranties for 3 years, which is kind of odd. You know, if you're gonna go that way, it sure wouldn't be nice to have that warranty match up with the maintenance plan, wouldn't it? I mean, I think we know how that kind of turns out. But at the end of the day, it's a fabulous car. I love this thing. And I'm a redneck, I'll be honest. You know, I like old school muscle. I like old school vibrating cars that make noise and go like the wind and just feel rough and, you know, edgy. And, you know, I was at an autocross the other day. I was watching a little event there that they had on, a Horsepower for Hope. And there were some cool cars there, some old muscle going through there. And they were leaning, barely making the corners. And it was a lot of fun. It was truly a great experience to see what some of these people were dealing with. Cars that probably weren't meant to corner, but they were cornering. Take that. Let's go out and talk about this. Pop the engine lid. Let's flip this, shall we? Pop it up. See, you have that engine, and you know, it's not even warm. I love it. So I don't even have to take the car truly for a drive and actually experience it. Now you have the high voltage cables here. There's probably, you know, the electric motor tucked in down in here is probably a little bit warm just from tooling around for the last 15 minutes. But honestly, you know, you can go out, take this thing for a spin and truly enjoy it for a lot of its merits without being, you know, going absolutely balls to the wall. Because not always do you want to go balls to the wall. Sometimes you just want to get in. You know what? That was another thing that when I first got this car, there were so many times I just decided to, you know, scoot on out to the garage, jump in the car, turn on the music. The car was plugged in the whole time, and I sat in there for like an hour. Call me a nut job, but I sat in the car for like an hour, put on Apple CarPlay, turned on some of my favorite tunes, and just sat in there. And I didn't have to worry about destroying the battery or knocking that out because it was plugged in and the car was good to go. And it's just sitting in there, enjoying the atmosphere, the ambiance, the smell of the new car. But there's that element of flexibility in some of these new hypercars and supercars that now you have a car that has no right to be, you know, 830 horsepower driving just to the rear wheels. There was a time when you couldn't control that, but Ferrari, they have such immense drivetrain and traction control systems. They have the Evo brakes, which is an upgraded ABS system, which helps this car stop on a dime. It's truly crazy. You know, I've taken this car, I had an experience there a bunch of months ago. Actually, it was before winter. I think it was last fall. I was invited by my favorite buddy from the Ferrari dealership. He invited me, he said, Mark, come on down. I took out a car and I did a short run. We did to the racetrack. It wasn't a racetrack. It was actually a runway down in Calgary, YYC there. And they had a bunch of cars. Ferrari brought a bunch of cars to show off in the dog and pony show. And we were able to run them flat out on the runways. I mean, flat out. We had speeds that we were up in that 250, 260K an hour at the end of these straightaways, 150 miles an hour at the end of a straight. You hammer on the brakes and it stops. But you took some time to build up that confidence that the car can actually do that, because it's immense, the amount of performance that you're getting. Like, these cars are absolutely mind-blowing. You know, I think back the Gallardo I had. That was a fun car, made some cool sounds, but it just felt like it had concrete, 1,000 pounds of concrete in the trunk compared to this. The way this thing feels so lively, it doesn't feel like it carries any extra weight. You know, there is a weight penalty for having an electric motor and to have the batteries under the seat, but you don't feel it. You just don't feel it. It feels lightweight. It feels nimble. The front suspension, the brakes, everything feels like it turns on a dime. This car is just crazy. I'm being quite honest. You know, the only other car I can say, you know, you can quantify that is maybe a hair edgier, no faster, would be maybe a, you know, McLaren 765 LT, the new McLaren 750. This will edge both of those out, and I mean, edge them. I've seen them. I've seen guys do pulls, and ultimately they're very, very close. But this does it in a finesseful way, and it gives you extra versatility. And the McLaren, it's crazy. You know, there's that power band that comes from turbocharging and the big lag, and then when it hits, it just feels nuts. It's a little bit more lively feeling, but it's also a reliability nightmare. From people that I've known, and McLarens are a lot of fun, but you know, Ferraris, they're not exactly a Honda Accord, but you know what, they do seem to have things a little bit better dialed in. Same thing with the Artura, which is their version of a hybrid with the V6 twin turbo like this. Also seemed to have a lot of, you know, bugs to work out when it first came out. But honestly, you know, this car with the big brakes, you know, the big ABS system, traction control that somehow keeps those wheels from breaking loose, at least when you have it in the certain modes. I mean, if you turn off traction control, this thing's a nightmare. It's a scary car that when you leave it in its default settings, allows you to push the car to its limits and not feel like it's out of control. It makes you feel like Superman driving this thing. And, you know, on the street, I'm going to drive like a wuss, straight up. But when I get those opportunities to take this thing to the track, like I did in that runway in Calgary, you better believe I'm going to run the wheels off it in those conditions. And this car is so capable, but yet it's so practical. And I can get in and I can do those little jaunts and those little trips and not worried about firing up that fire-breathing dragon behind there. I can just use the electrified system. Now, I never thought I'd ever be on board for a hybrid vehicle. I don't think I could ever be a pure electric owner. I just can't. You don't get that element of the sound and the vibration. But this brings the benefits of the electrification and the internal combustion engine and sort of puts it together somehow and makes it the car even better than you could ever dream. It's just, it's crazy. I love this thing. It's phenomenal, man. I honestly, phenomenal. I could not be happier. And I still feel totally blessed because I'm a cheap ass. Look at my $5 glasses. I'm the guy always looking for deals. I'm the guy always looking for bargains. I'm the guy staying at that 2-star hotel. I'm good with that. I don't care. Let people criticize. But now I get to drive this as a result. So anyway, I hope you all took something out of this. This new technology is not something to hate. It's something to take on and enjoy and lather in the goodness. It's not a negative, it's a positive. Anyway, hope to see each and every one of you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and we'll talk to you all real soon. All right, bye-bye.